as being rated rather as the city to watch, and also being ranked at 145th most expensive city to live in. Just how much has the state done in respect to its housing agenda, and how expensive or affordable is it to either construct or own a home in this country? This is what you're set to discuss at least at this hour with my guest, that is George Mburu, who is the CEO of Mizizi Africa Limited. Karibu sana to the program.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Asante sana.
Yes.
Now, I just want us to broach this discussion from demystifying some myths that are already out here before we get to the details of this. And right now, as it stands, is that there's a craze, particularly amongst young people, to just either own a home or construct a house, even though at that point or in that moment they don't really need to or really want to, but because of recognition, status, to feel appreciated in the society. Is that the case?
Sure. Yeah, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. One thing that you will notice is that affordable housing or housing is a basic need. And in the basic needs, we normally know that we learned in the lower primary school, it is food, shelter, and clothing. That is a basic need. And shelter is basically housing. So housing is a need that is has been put behind the scenes, and it has been seen to be like it's a want. And a want is something that maybe you have for luxury, for recognition, as you have stated, but a need is something that you need for your survival, and it is something that we need as a country to stabilize our economy. And when you look at housing, affordable housing, to be specific, was considered to be one of the big four agendas by the Jubilee administration.
Yes.
And this was done after looking at the vision that we have as a country, which is Vision 2030. When you look at the blueprint of the Vision 2030, and you also look at the people who came up with the blueprint, you will be able to see where as a country we should be able to go, and housing is one of it, and it also touches on all the other spheres. If you look at for example, the big four agendas, we have housing, we have agriculture, we have manufacturing, which comes with the employment, and we also have healthcare. And all these things are interlinked. Because, for example, you look at an example of a home that this is a normal standard home that has a wife, a husband, and children, let's say 2-3 children, and they have a home. Those people, for sure, you consider them to be people who are stable. Why? Because already their basic needs have been met. And such a person, let's say, for example, is the husband. That husband is able to have peace of mind because there is no rent that they are paying. They're able to go out of their way and create now the other needs. They're able to buy a good car, they're able to educate the children, they're able to take health matters of their children to the hospitals and such things. And so you find that the housing need is a basic need, and it is something that we need to address more. And there is a statistic that was done that 2 million houses were needed by the time the agendas were being drawn. 2 million houses were needed, and each and every year, because of the increase in population, 200,000 units are needed. So you see, with the deficit of 2 million, if that you increase 200,000 each and every year, you combine all that, you see the deficit of houses. And we are just talking about a basic house, a house whereby you have water, you have electricity, you have a latrine inside there, just a basic house that has security. At least somebody is able to sleep comfortably. Very basic. It doesn't have to be so complicated. But now, after you have met all those needs, you're able now to go the extra mile and meet now the needs of the want. Good living and such.
Now, well said. I mean, also just looking at what you've said, George, let me just pick your mind on basically also what is happening, because as you're also establishing, it could be a basic need, and we agree just also from what you mentioned, but also we cannot be devoid of the fact that it's also a craze, particularly amongst the young folk. But also, when you look at our culture, particularly as Africans, we always have this narrative that for the sons, they need to go back to the village and ensure they build a house. But you again understand that a good number of them don't even live there. Either they live in the city or abroad. Is that a good investment?
Yeah, thank you very much. And the craze that you have mentioned, is a good craze because
So it's a good thing?
It's a good thing.
Okay.
Because, like for example, we as Mrs. Africa Homes Limited, we normally encourage, once you have your basic house, that is not the end. You need to have now another house which you can use as a form of business. Don't just look at it so that you can be seen. You have a proper plan. It's not for showing off. It's not so that you can get recognition. It is part of your plan. And like we normally encourage in Mrs. Africa Homes Limited, once you have gotten your first house, now you have met your basic needs. That is not the end. You need to have now an extra house which you can use as a form of income. And by that I mean that house you can be letting it out and you get a rental income at the end of the month. You can decide to resell. You resell it after it is constructed. For example, we do off plan. You come by the time you are starting the construction. By the time you are done with the construction, you have a ready house and you have a title. That ready house can get a buyer very fast because that buyer can go and be given a loan, a mortgage or something. Then that house you can also use it in the Airbnb. Like for example, we have seen the Airbnb is driving very well and it is driving all over. Yeah, it's a booming business. And the reason why it is booming is, for example, you have a family, as you have said, who stay in town, let's say in Nairobi or in Mombasa or any other town, but they need to go back at home. We have others who are living in the diaspora. At the end of the year or once in a while, they need to go back to their rural home to go and see their parents and their relatives. But you find that they had not constructed a house, or the house that they had constructed when they were young people, it is just a small house which cannot accommodate now a wife and children. So what do? And again, they can't go to sleep to the parents' house. They need to look for a house that is nearby and not buy everything. They do not have to burn every coin that they have saved to come and visit their parents and buy furniture and all those things. They need a house that is furnished. They need a house that is ready, a house that is good. And again, you will find they will want to be around. So you will find somebody who has constructed a house in their village and a very nice one, has furnished. They can either have it as a rental income, but again they can put it in the Airbnb, and Airbnb are doing so well. And nowadays, because as you have correctly put, people are in town, people are out of the country, the people are working, but they do not have somewhere they can go back. So the encouragement here is, first of all, you can either start by getting the one for giving you an extra income, then you look at your own, but at the end of the day you need to have at least two. Have your own, then have another one that can be generating income, and that is passive income, because passive income you do not have to be there. And if the trend continues and you do that over and over and over again, those are the kind of people now by the time they are retiring, these are the people that we are looking up to, and they are very stable. They can be able to entertain their grandchildren because they have the resources, and like others who maybe who did not save or use that route, and even now their children are running away. They do not want to go and visit. The grandchildren do not want to go and visit, and that is when you find somebody is aging, they are complaining, they have been left by their loved ones, which is not a good thing still, because you also need to look at the vulnerable. Yeah, so if we make the right decisions from the onset, as young as you are, that is the way to go, and your future will definitely be bright. Yeah.
And you've just read my mind, because I was about to ask you then, which is the best place to start from? Is it that constructing your own house where you can live with your family, or for business purposes? And just as you mentioned, that it's good enough for proper investment. Start with what can bring you income, because at the end of the day, it's the process that you might use now to actually construct the home for living. So for those that do it vice versa, is it something that needs to be corrected as you move on?
Sure, thank you very much. You will notice that the first doesn't always have to be so good. For example, a young man, for example, who has come from primary school, like in some societies, they're expected to go through initiation, right? And they do not have to, they can't stay actually in their parents' house. They have to have a small cubicle with only 2 rooms. At that particular time, it is sufficient because you do not have a family. So what I can encourage, when you are doing your own house, the house that you are living, it doesn't have to be so magnificent, what that word? It doesn't have to be all that. It just needs to cater for your needs.
Something simple.
Yeah, something simple. You do not have to impress press people to talk about you. You build a very big house. Have it simple, as long as it is catering for your need. Then you can, if you have an extra income, invest in something that can be generating you income, and that money that will be generating from that passive income is what now will enable you build a proper house. And that proper house, by the time now you are getting to a level, you have a wife, you have children, you are now a family, you'll also upgrade with the time. So the encouragement here, when you are young and you have the means, it is better you invest. Just live small, do not live large, just live within, actually below your means, live below your means.
Not within your means.
Yeah, if you are young, if you are a young person, live below your means. Now, once you are old and you have established yourself, you can live anyhow you want.
Now you can live above
you can live above your limit. Yeah, actually, people who have the means, they have passive incomes, they have money. They're the people who now we try to emulate. And by so doing, we find that we are living above our means, and we are living to please other people, not for ourselves, which is very wrong. But if you live below your means, especially when you are a young person, if you can afford a 15,000 house, don't live in a 10,000 house. You can afford 10,000 house, live in a 5,005. Then these extra shillings, put them for saving, to have to invest them in something that you can be getting a passive income. Then by the time now you become you have more responsibilities, you have children, you have bills to settle. Again, you have now more sources of income, and you are more stable.
Okay, well said. Now, even as we momentarily continue the conversation, we talk about cost as we move forward. But just let me backtrack a bit and move to the housing and where we are even as a country in respect to the affordable housing, knowing fully well that this was one of the ideas, as you've mentioned, for the outgoing government in 2017 as they rolled out the Big Four agenda. And this was about 500,000 units. But at least as it stands, even just as of last year, September, about 2,235 houses is what they had constructed and even occupied. When you look at the margins, there's really quite a huge deficit to be filled. And this is also in line with the Vision 2030 when you talked about the blueprint therein. So as we talk about the issue of housing in this country, and as you've mentioned also, Nairobi is one of those cities that is being looked at in terms of just living in this space. Where are we in that sense? Is it a far-fetched idea? It was a good idea, but is it really far-fetched?
Yeah, thank you very much. You will realize that the need that was brought online to the limelight by affordable housing was brought to the limelight because of the need and the crisis that is there. Because once a country has a deficit of over 2 million houses, what that means is that if you look at 2 million houses, you multiply by a standard family maybe has 5 people. We are talking of 2 million people times 5, that is 10 million. So we are talking of over 10 million people who should ideally be housed. They are not housed. So it brings a crisis. And each and every year, 200,000 units, because of the increase in population, people are growing, people are getting families, the crisis continues. So if this crisis, we do not take care of it, or we push it aside and we say, this agenda is not possible, let us push it aside, it means we are pushing aside a crisis which will continue to be a crisis. And once a crisis has gotten to the peak, now people have to react, and you will find that is when now the revolutions come. That is when you find now even people going to State House to, like it happened in the Sri Lanka, people now they want to take charge because they have been so much pressed that they can't take it anymore. So the thing that we need to do is learn from what the lessons that we learned from the Jubilee administration. For sure, the Jubilee administration did not manage to hit the target, which is 500,000 units by the time they finished their term, and they did a small percentage. But now what we need to do is go and pick lessons. We pick lessons from this big dream, and we see why was it not able to achieve whatever it had set to achieve, and what are the lessons we can pick, and we pick those lessons. We build now from what they failed. And one thing that we can encourage, and we as private developers like Mrs. Africa Homes Limited, we have seen it is something that people need. because each and every time customers are coming to us with this problem, and you have heard of companies that have failed, and the new companies are coming up, and still they're getting buyers. Why? Because there is a need that needs to be met, and somebody has to do it. So what I can encourage maybe the administration that will come on board, from whatever we have learned as private developers, is that private developers are very crucial in this agenda. It is not an agenda that the government will say, we will do it. Because as a government, the work of our government is to give an enabling environment, is to give policies that can guide the private players in how they are going to work, in putting a level playing ground, ensuring that we do not have rogue developers, ensuring that, especially we need to look at the first-time homeowners, because the first house, that is where there's a big problem. First-time homeowners, somebody who needs their first, second house, third house, fourth house, that is no longer a need, that is a want. But for people who they need, and we are not talking about the small cubicle, we are talking of somebody who is working in town, like we have mentioned, Nairobi is a town to watch, and this is because there are so many people who are educated, there are opportunities here, and if we create security within Nairobi. Nairobi and even our country, we are able to attract even foreign investors in our country. If we look at security, and how do we get security? We have people who are at least a bit stable. They can meet their basic need: food, shelter, and clothing. So if we look at helping the young people and having the people who want their first homes, their first homes. And there was a bill sometimes back in the parliament, and that is a very crucial bill that needs to come back to the house ASAP, and there also needs to be private public participation in that bill, so that we can look at it, all of us, including the private developers who have been left out. And you'll be surprised, like there's the international financiers who are willing to give money to people who need homes as a mortgage at only 7%.
All right.
But that one somehow never came into being. So even international partners are willing to help that agenda, especially for the first-time homeowners. Yeah.
And you've mentioned the first-time homeowners quite a number of times, and I want us to stick there a bit, even as we try to tie it down with the cost. And you know that anytime we talk about construction or building, the issue of cost never misses in someone's mind. And no, it's not a cheap thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do as well. And also, you cannot forget the kind of levies attached to construction. I mean, it was just in 2016 where the government had removed the NEMA fees, so to speak, but now last year that was reintroduced amongst a host of different other fees and levies that one needs to pay just before they can begin, or even as they continue constructing. I want you to talk to us about the cost in respect to these fees and levies, and why in the first place they are important.
Sure. Yeah, thank you very much. And for sure, I have mentioned the first-time homeowners, because that is where there is the need. For a person who wants a second house, that is a want. As much as it may be earning you an extra income, it is a want, but the basic is your first. Maybe you can have your basic, your first house, we set a standard that, and this one should also include when we are doing the taxes. We set a standard. It may be standard for people who are beginning, and a different standard for people who now want it as a need. And for the first-time homeowners, we can try and get rid of all the taxes. The taxes, yes, they are important because the government, again, needs revenue to run its activity. It's good. But if we can safeguard the first-time homeowners, and even basically, generally, if you can safeguard the person on the lowest cadre, the consumer, if you can be able to protect the consumer, and the consumer who needs that product or service as a need. We differentiate between a need and a want. And the person who has a need is somebody who has a family. You have gotten to the age of, for example, 35. You are now becoming, you are no longer a youth. You need help. You need your family settled. You need to have a home. That is where now the government can have very proper policies for such a person we need as a government to do ABCD. You'll be surprised now if you set now another a higher standard for people who want their second house. They can actually pay some more money. The one who needs the first one, you make it absolutely easy. You make it almost free.
But then if you're saying that, and you've just earlier on said that it is important for the government to also generate income through these levies and fees. So then how does the government do this? Or does it rely on the second time owners?
Good. The second time home owners, the person now who is stable, they have the peace of mind. And for example, there's a tax also that is has been introduced apart from now the NEMA and the other NCA and what have you. There is another levy which is called like capital gain. Capital gain, which is something somebody pays, is a tax you pay once you have sold, let's say, a house. You had bought a house, you are selling it. We give the private developers the headlights to be the front leaders. Then we give them the means. For example, you can be able to tell this is somebody who has another house. So this is somebody who is doing this as a one, because the government has all that. So that when you are handling a second time buyer and somebody who is reselling, so that they can make money, we're able to know, and we make that we differentiate the two, then we encourage. And you will be surprised because, like for example, Rasmus is Africa Homes Limited, we have people, they have bought home but they want to resell. They want to resell and make some money, isn't it? If we can have those people to be so many, you'll find that those people who are selling their second home will assist those who are buying their first, because they will not make so much margin. They make a small margin. Also, the government makes a small margin. But by extension, we have more people who are paying for it. You get the point?
Yeah, and so in that way it becomes a win-win for both. So basically what I'm getting for you is that it's an issue of policy and trying to make it easy for Kenyans, particularly for first-time home owners. But also, George, we can laud the state, because just as of the last concluded national event, that is the Jamhuri Day celebration, the president announced a 15% electricity tariff reduction, whereby it's supposed to take place in 2 phases. That was from last year, December, the second phase to take place in March of this year. When you look at what at least the state is doing in respect to that, what is the impact of this when it comes to either owning, constructing, or buying a house?
So thank you very much. And as I stated, we need to pick up from what the previous government had started, the Jubilee administration. And for example, the affordable housing, we look at what did not work and what worked, so that we can build from that. Then we also involve the private players like us, Mrs. Africa Homes Limited, who have also experienced it and have either we are continuing to do well, or others have failed. We see also what happened for them to fail. And again, for example, like the issue of electricity, which is something very good, that is encouraged that every person gets electricity. And there are also the issue of fuel, the cautioning of people. It's very commendable to the government. But that is not all. Once you have eaten and
so
you are
they've
full,
done at least something.
Yes, once you have eaten and you are full, you need a glass of water. So because you are full, you can't say you won't take a glass of water. So let's now take it to a notch higher. We look at, for example, these levies that are put. We avoid putting levies on blanket, as a blanket. For example, the issue of fuel. The issue of fuel, if you are fueling a car, which is a private, it is the same. What I can encourage, it is the cost will be the same. And the same cost for somebody who is buying fuel to do the electricity, still the same. So you find like this fuel has been taxed, all of it generally, and it is not helping everybody in equal measures. So what I can encourage, let's say for example the fuel levy. Let's remove all taxes from fuel.
Is that even practical?
For example, I'm coming there.
That's an example.
I'm coming there. We remove all the taxes in fuel, so that for somebody who is buying, let's say, kerosene, that is somebody who is using that for cooking. They pay for free. Kenya Power or Kengen, whichever manufactures the electricity, they need diesel. That diesel, they buy it without paying any tax. It helps manufacture electricity almost for free. Then, for example, we have seen the expressway. We have toll stations. For people who now need the roads, for example, who are using the roads, you have diesel, you have petrol. Those people, they pay the levy at that point. And that levy, again, is not collected in cash. We have the accounts that money is channeled. So, for example, if you are somebody, you are traveling, and mostly maybe, let's say, you are traveling for business, you pay maybe money that you are coming from Nakuru to Nairobi. You pay some extra money that goes to the to assist road maintenance, to bring in other needs. You will find that the person that is at the lowest level is cautioned, because they are getting that almost for free. People who are using, let's say, for example, gas, that one also is levied. Or if you need, for somebody who has a 13 kg, put the tax there. If you look at the people who are at the lowest level, we cater for that need. You will see that in terms of security, because there will be no people who are not jobless, they will be catered, in security will be good. We'll be able to assist all these other channels. If you assist the basic one, the basic needs, food, shelter, clothing. And when we are talking of food, shelter and clothing, we are not talking about fashion, we are not talking about a good house that luxurious.
It's
we are
the
not basic.
Okay, I hear you. Now, as you wind down, George, I'd just like to get your closing remarks, even as you talk about perhaps alternatives, because I mean, we can't really exhaust the issue of costs. It's a very pertinent issue when you talk about housing, and also when you look at the cost even of material right now, it has been on an upward trend. Look at the cement, the steel, and so forth. So then, can we use alternative forms of material as we think of construction and building?
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very quickly, you'll find that Kenya and Africa, we are blessed to have natural resources. We have things like stones, natural stones in our quarries. We have ballast in our rivers, that we can be manufactured. We have sand that is in the, you can find it in the river, like free. We have natural resources that are here for free. Now what we need to do is how to harvest them. For example, you'll find ballast. It comes from stones that we have here, but we need that machine for crushing. If we can be able to get those machines, we import those machines, we get people to come and train people so that we can be able to know how to use those machines. You will find, and again, you have put the cost of transportation to be very low. You will find that,
just as you've mentioned earlier.
Yes, the materials that we have locally, we'll be able to add value to them. If it's a machine for crushing, what we need are these machines that are used in other countries, because the natural resources are here. The natural resources are taken from here, they are taken for processing to other parts, they are sold to us at a very exorbitant price. So if we can be able to get those machines, get the know-how on how to operate those machines, use our natural resources without taking them there for processing and bringing them back at a very high price, if we do that, actually, even the people, the international communities, within no time they'll be looking up to us to give them aid, because we have used our natural things, like, let's say, stones for making ballast, cement. We have if we have those companies manufacture cement, which is we just need maybe to import a very small component just to finish that chemistry. But we have most of the things. It's only that our resources are not well utilized, and you find people who should be actually getting aid from us are giving us aid. Why? They are coming, taking the natural resource, go process, come sell it back exorbitantly. So at the end of the day, we are the losers. We are the losers at the end of the day. And also, I mean, when you look at the technologies available there, out there, George, also in terms of just trying to see how we can reduce the cost of construction, because at the end of the day, we have to meet this affordable housing agenda. You have to meet the Vision 2030, so to speak, when it comes to housing. The precast kind of technology, does it in any way at least reduce cost
And
Sure.
in what way does
Sure.
it do so?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I have interacted with the precasts, and they are good and they are quality. And this is because
First,
we
what
have-
form of technology is this? Just for viewers to understand what exactly you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
What you're talking about, for example, we have a machine. We have what we need to do is to import those machines. That those. It's not to import the precasts.
Okay.
You'll be surprised. We import the precasts as opposed to importing the machines to come and make the precasts here. So you find somebody comes and the precast we are talking about is something very simple. It is mixing sand and mixing cement and pressing it using a certain machine, and it brings that precast out. Something so simple. But you find the thing that is so simple, it is complicated, that this precast has to be imported. By so doing, we are taking our currency, the foreign currencies reserves that we have few here. We are taking to buy things that we should have made here, and not have to take our dollars or our foreign currencies out.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is import these things that are making these fabricated, these you have called them?
Yep, the precast.
Precasts.
Yes.
Precasts are simply things that are made from what we have, but these things are taken, gone and made with a machine that we can import and use it here. Like for example, as Mrs. Africa Homes Limited, and we are happy with the government because they have those machines and they have displayed them in the agricultural shows, Like recently we were in an expo and we were able to see it, and it is from the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Housing and Construction and Roads, and for sure those are the kind of information we need to pass over now to people, because people don't have that information.
Yeah.
People just know precast. Using precast is cheaper. They do
And
not
actually,
know.
people know that using precast is cheap and don't understand what exactly that
They don't
means.
understand. And it is something that has only been made. Like for example, the stone that I was talking about that interacted, it is made in such a way that it is, there are two places. One, it is pressed, it is able to fit in a fixed hapo. You don't need to use much cement. Yeah, so that's a precast stone, a stone that has been set to reduce an extra cost like cement and what have you, and yeah, it makes our work easier, makes it cheaper. But if you can have it here, those machines
It even
here,
makes it better.
much better. You can't even compare. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, George. That was informative. At least now we understand what exactly this means in terms of construction, where we are as a country as it pertains to affordable housing, and what more we need to do at least to bridge that gap so that now it can become a reality. We don't just keep talking about it, but it now becomes a reality.
Very true.
Asante sana.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so grateful. Yeah, and look forward to more.
Okay.
Asante.
Right, that has been George Mburu, CEO, Mizizi Africa Limited, of course, talking to us about the high cost of building and the housing agenda and where we are as a country as it pertains to affordable housing and the housing agenda. I'm Doreen Arange Okello on behalf of the entire team. Asante sana. We'll do this again tomorrow. Good morning.